Okay, so this is episode 21.5, and it has to do with the difference between laying things out versus formatting. So here's the deal. In the old days, when there weren't computers, if people made a visual image, they laid it out on paper. And the relationship between the words and the images was determined and fixed by the artist, the graphic layout person. But now we live in a day where people have so many different screen sizes. We have a big phone, and we have little phones, and we have laptops, and we have desktops. So much different screen real estate that the same formatting would not make sense when you have a 32-inch screen and a 4.2-inch screen. So we have something called responsive website design. Most websites today are responsive, meaning that the browser interrogates the end user's device and says, hey, you have this much screen real estate, I better do such and such. And it controls the relationship between where things show up on the page. And this, I would call this sort of formatting that you didn't do, that a machine did, versus layout, which you did do. Now, probably a lot of the world that's been born in the last 20 years doesn't know anything different than responsive, digitally formatted things. But if you looked at a magazine article and a cover and an ad, it looked a lot more beautiful 50 years ago than it looks today, because the layout was controlled by the artist. It was aesthetically a set of trade-offs. But formatting, you don't have control over this. And we knew this was coming. I actually filed patents in the 1990s, 30 years ago, for adaptive content delivery, because I knew that not only would screens be different sizes, but some people cared more about words and pictures, and some people liked soundtracks, and some people liked numbers and spreadsheets. So the whole thought that one size fits all, which would be the case in a published book or a magazine 50 years ago, but today in a website, well, one size doesn't have to fit all. But in general, it's only the formatting they're messing around with, not numerical versus image-centric or word-centric. And I didn't expect to be upset by this, because after all, I did file patents for adaptive content delivery in 1993 and 4 and 5. And by the way, when you have a startup company and your legal bills are the single largest line item in the budget, because that's what it costs to protect your IP, that's a major bummer. Especially since, although I filed the patents, none of this stuff happened until 20 years later, and patents only last for 17 years. But coming back to layout versus formatting, I didn't realize I was so attached to the layout. I really wanted things to look the way they looked. And I no longer have control over that on the web, but I do if I make a piece of print material, like a trifold or an invitation or a poster. And much to my surprise, I'm finding out that there is definitely some conflict between layout and formatting when you're not the one who's doing the formatting. And in fact, a human being is not even doing the formatting. I don't see any way around it, because I too use multiple screen sizes. But if I really want something to look good, I kind of need to freeze the screen size. And this was counterintuitive, especially for a guy who filed patents for adaptive content delivery. I never thought I wouldn't want the content to be adaptive. It didn't occur to me that I wanted it to be a certain way. But evidently that's true, and I don't know what's going to happen in younger generations. Maybe they won't have very much experience with content being in any particular way unless they have one device, and every time they look at things on that device, it's always the same. And hey, things don't even look the same on Macs and on PCs. They don't make iMacs that have built-in M-class processors, but iMacs still look better than any external monitor you can buy without spending more money on the monitor than the entire iMac cost. iMacs used to cost a couple of $1,000s. Now 5K monitors cost more than that, but you don't get the computer. So this adaptivity is not necessarily creating stuff that looks better. And I'm probably not the only one who's concerned about the difference between layout and formatting. And a similar thing happens in the audible domain. Most of us are listening to compressed audio, MP3 files. MP3 files do not sound like WAV files. When audio is compressed to make it take up less space, you lose a lot. It's a pretty big difference. And now that most of the world is listening to compressed audio instead of real audio, their threshold for quality is shifting, just like in the formatting. And this is not an analog versus a digital thing. You can make digital formatting be fantastic. You can have digital audio files that are not compressed. You could have digital layouts that are not adaptive. So it's not an analog versus digital thing. It's a trying to compress things in the audio realm and trying to automatically lay them out in the video realm. But in the audio realm, now that bandwidth is becoming ubiquitous, my prediction is that we will transcend MP3 files and go back to uncompressed audio because we're going to have plenty of bandwidth. But I don't think we're going to transcend formatting instead of layouts. I think we're going to still be stuck with it. So that's the topic for section 21.5, layouts versus formatting.